Welcome to the Betting Above the Rim podcast. Today's day, June 2nd, episode 154 of the Betting Above the Rim podcast. And let's get started with our tip-off topics with revenge, not this year for the New York Knicks. The Indiana Pacers win game number 6, 125-108, covering the spread as a favorite and eliminating the Knicks in 6 games. And this series and this game really is a microcosm of this series in its entirety. The Knicks played from behind. They made runs, but at the end of the day, they did not have enough to get it done. And you have to look at and really congratulate Rick Carlisle and the Indiana Pacers for really an incredible run. This was a team that was disrespected going all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and you could argue that their best player, Tyrese Halliburton, didn't finish the series versus Boston, what could have been after they lost game 1 in overtime. But they ran it back with the same core, and they got the job done. And you have to really look at why Indiana is the way that they are. First off, you have to talk about the Eastern Conference MVP, and that's Pascal Siakam, who scored 15 or more points in every game. Obviously, 39 points in game number 2, I should say, of the finals, and really was the most consistent player. You could talk about Tyrese Halliburton and his 30-point, 14, 15 assists, 10 rebound, triple-double with, no turnovers and say maybe you could look at him as the MVP. But Pascal was so consistent for Indiana that I thought that they made the right choice in naming Pascal the MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals. But it's more than that. Aaron Naismith had a really superb game in game number 6, really switching on to Brunson. I do believe he ended up with 6 steals and played exceptional defense on JB, but also, did some things offensively. Aaron Naismith had a big series. Miles Turner had his moments in this series. You could look at just honestly the way Rick Carlisle used his roster and his bench. I mean, let's be honest, folks. Did you have Thomas Bryant making 3-corner threes in a deciding game 6 after a 1 point during this round? He was relegated to the bench until an injury took place. So as much as I want to be upset about what happened with my hometown New York Knicks, you have to give credit where credit's due. And what they did was absolutely phenomenal. Congratulations to Rick Carlisle and Indiana Pacers for making the NBA Finals for the first time since the year 2000. So because the Pacers won, that means my Knicks were knocked out. And looking at a season in which they went 51-31, made a huge trade, getting Karl-Anthony Towns for Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle right at the beginning of training camp. Here's your notable players on their roster. Brunson, obviously we talked about Cat, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges. That's going to be big with the four first-round picks and a 1 swap with the Nets. Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, Mitchell Robinson, Preston Achua, and we also can mention Larry Shamet and DeLon Wright as they got playing time in the playoffs. The Knicks are in an interesting spot here. Because of the way that Jalen Brunson took literally $100 million less when he took his extension, the Knicks actually have wiggle room. Their starting 5, if they stay the same, will be Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, Towns. Now, there could be wiggle room of Mitchell Robinson maybe starting instead of Josh Hart, because that was the thought process of New York going into last season. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson was hurt. So maybe you bring Josh Hart off the bench. Deuce McBride had, at times, a big postseason. Not the first series, second 2 series, played better. Still didn't look like he had the true trust of Tom Thibodeau. Tyler Kolek is someone that is going to be a developmental piece in regards to trying to make them better. Ariel Hukporti, another international. He's got a team option. Knicks will pick it up. PJ Tucker, it's provided toughness, locker room leadership. He should have his option picked up as regards either as a trade piece or to stay with the Knicks. And then obviously, Pacome Dadier, another rookie on the roster. But here's the big thing with the Knicks. The Knicks are, over the first apron, under the second, they're at the threshold, but under the aprons. So that gives them an ability to use the 5.7 mid-level exception. Now, here's the thing with the Knicks. They got to improve their bench. Preston Chua is an unrestricted free agent. He could be gone. Cam Payne is an unrestricted free agent. He will be gone. You can look at Larry Shamet, who had some moments in this last round, was relegated to the bench. Maybe they bring him back, or DeLon Wright. So either way, you need a couple of things to happen for New York. Number one, you have to need either Hug Porty to ascend to be a backup four, if possible, to beat Mitchell Robinson, or you have to go get a backup four big. Then, does Dadier make the big jump? Probably not. The Knicks are probably going to look for a guard. They need someone in that Dante DiVincenzo mold with that mid-level exception of $5.7 million. I don't know. I mean, I doubt he'll take it for this, but someone that I just looked at the playoffs, a Malik Beasley would be a perfect fit for the Knicks. As a second, in a second group, they could play with Hart and with Deuce in a three-guard alignment. That's tough defensively. Can guard, 2 threes, and obviously can knock down the three-point shot. For the bigs, they're talking here about maybe if Al Horford would come to New York. Al Horford, New York guy, remember, close friends with who? Karl Anthony Towns, both of Dominican descent. So it'll be interesting to see what the Knicks do, but the Knicks are at a point now where they don't have to blow it up. They may still do so, and they have a right to do so, but with trading the 4 first-round picks and the pick swap for Mikal Bridges, the Knicks don't have a lot of room in regards to actual picks to throw at people. It's going to be really Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, some of the other contracts to try and get a superstar in. Let's head really quickly to Minnesota. We never did this last week when they were knocked out. 49-33. I thought they were a little bit better with the regular season, but they got to the Western Conference Finals. Ant, Randall, McDaniels, Naz Reid, Gobert, DiVincenzo, Conley, Alexander Walker. This is another team that should be up and have some changes for next year. Number one is both Julius Randle and Naz Reid have team options for this coming year. It'll be interesting to see if they extend Randle, which I think with the way he did in the playoffs, has earned his right to be an exception. I think he's a perfect complementary piece of number two to Anthony Edwards. Then you got to look at particularly Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They're both going to opt out, and both are going to get paid. Alexander Walker is a free agent. Naz Reid is a player option. He will cash that in and go try and get more money. The key thing I want people to look at when you look at the reserves is between Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. Can one of those guys be developed? Now, you look at someone like Rob Dillingham, could he eventually take over the point guard duties from Mike Conley? Because they do need an upgrade at the point guard position at some point. Terrence Shannon Jr. could be someone that could be on that second group, particularly if you lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., bucket getter from Illinois, but a tough, rugged defender. Interesting off-seasons both for the New York Knicks and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Coming up next, we'll get into our award tour as we're here. We'll get down to the NBA Finals. OKC is a heavy favorite versus the Indiana Pacers. Where can we find ourselves making some money with such a huge favorite? We'll look at odds to win top scorer, top rebounder, most assists, most three-pointers made. We're basically breaking down the whole damn finals. Make sure you come back after this commercial break as we get into our award tour. Welcome back to the Betting Above the Rim podcast, episode 154, and it's time to get into our award tour as we break down future markets in the NBA. And with the NBA Finals tipping off Thursday, the best way that my producer Maddie, George, and I decided to do this is we'll spend the award tour now looking at the series odds. We'll look at some leaders in a bunch of different categories. The scouting report for today will just be WNBA games on Tuesday and or Wednesday. And then when we come back to record on Wednesday, we'll get more into points per game averages, stuff like that, and then we'll give you some plays and some props for game number one. So let's head and look at the series odds with the Oklahoma City Thunder as an overwhelming favorite of minus 750 to the Pacers plus 530. Oklahoma City spread at minus 2.5, over under 5.5 games. You know, it's the way that Indiana has looked, you would think that they're being disrespected by the Buckeyes, and I think they are. Should they be the favorites? No, absolutely not. Should Oklahoma City be more of a maybe 4-1, 4.5-1, like minus 400, minus 500? Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a better place than minus 750. That being said, it is not worthy of you to lay minus 750 for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So you immediately take that off the table. It comes down to how many games do you think it takes the Oklahoma City Thunder to win? And I think that is the important thing to look at here when you break down this market, is that's where you want to try and find some kind of value, right? Like where do we think this series goes? So when you look at the series as a whole, the best odds right now are Oklahoma City minus the 2.5 games. Now, when you look at the Oklahoma City, minus the 2.5 games, that is minus money, but we're not talking about crazy minus money, right? We're looking at minus money that's a little bit more reasonable, right? If you look at the spread of minus 2.5 games being minus 132. If you go minus 1.5 games, you're minus 290. So even then, like unless you parlay it with some kind of series prop, which I don't even know if they'll even let you do, then you're not even really looking at this market. It's Oklahoma City minus 2.5 or bust. Do I see Oklahoma City winning this series in 5 or less games? The answer is yes. When you look at both teams, right, and you really do a deep dive here, if Indiana tries to make this a running series, Oklahoma City is just as deep as Indiana. And then you could look at the backups of Caruso, Wallace, Isaiah Joe, so on and so forth, being just as much as good or close to being as good as Obi, McConnell, Bryant, and Mathurin. So here's a wash. So you go to the starters. So when you run them, they're just as good. You also look at the fact of guarding SGA is going to be increasingly difficult. It's not Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson's 6'1" on a good day. SGA is 6'5" every day. So now a Nembhard can't really guard SGA unless he gets up in him. And who draws more fouls than Jalen Brunson? It's SGA, a.k.a. the free throw merchant, because he just gets people in foul trouble. So when you look at these things, it's Oklahoma City in 5 games or less. So it's up to you. You could take the series over under total games under minus 148. But to me, I think Oklahoma City wins. So taking the minus 148, because I don't think there's any way Indiana wins this in 4 or 5. I think you just go Oklahoma City Thunder minus 2.5 games at minus 132. Let's get to some props here really quick. Total point score, SGA minus 6,000, Jalen Williams 27-1, Siakam 36-1, Halliburton 49-1, Chet 130-1, Why are we even talking about this? It's SGA. We'll find out a different way to play SGA when we do the podcast on Wednesday. Assist leader, same thing. Halliburton minus 650. SGA 30 plus 390. And then obviously 65-1 for Jalen Williams. Same thing. It's going to be Halliburton. But this is where you get the interesting. Threes market. Halliburton plus 155. Naismith plus 390. Dort 5-1. SGA 8.5-1. Miles Turner 9-1. Jalen Williams 10-1. Caruso 21, along with Chet 35-1 for Siakam, who had a great shooting series, by the way. To me, it's Lou Dort. Hear me out. I think Naismith goes on SGA because you can't put Nembhard because Nembhard's not big enough. Tricky here, but then I think you go Nembhard probably goes to someone else. So I think Nembhard goes to probably Jalen Williams. Lou Dort gets guarded by Halliburton. He gets busy. You get the shot attempts, and if I'm Rick Carlisle, that's the guy let me beat on the starting lineup is Lou Dort from 3. Lou Dort 5-1 for made threes. Let's go real quickly to the rebounding market. Chet Holmgren is minus 130. Siakam is 5-1 plus 550 for Hartenstein, and then we have 7-1 for Jalen Williams, and then you got 10-1 for SGA, so on and so forth. To me, it's simply put with this. I'm going with Jalen Williams 7-1. Hear me out once again because I want to find money. Chet guards Siakam, perimeter. Hartenstein guards Turner, perimeter. Who can fly in and get the rebounds? One of the better defensive rebounding guards in the league. Jalen Williams 7-1 to lead in most total rebounds. Coming up next, we'll get into our scouting report as we go to the W. We preview some games in the WNBA as the Mystic take on the Fever. We look at the Mercury versus the Lynx, the Wings versus the Storm. And we get back and we'll talk about our scouting report in the W after this commercial break. Welcome back to the Betting Above the Rim podcast, episode 154. And it's time to get into our scouting report as we break down games in the WNBA. Well, like I said, we're going to focus on game 1 of the NBA Finals on Wednesday's podcast to be released on Thursday. So with the WNBA having 3 games on Tuesday, none on Wednesday, it's a perfect time to break down those matchups. Let's lead off with the Washington Mystics going against the Indiana Fever. Indiana Fever right now as a 3.5-point favorite. You got to remember, the Fever are 0-3 against the spread their last 3 games. The Mystics come in at 3-1 against the spread their last 4. Remember, last time they played, 83-77 win by the Mystics was Caitlin Clark's first game out due to the quad injury. Let's hope Caitlin Clark gets back soon. I'm going to go and take a chance on the Indiana Fever. An Indiana Fever team, like I said, has not played well. And it's going to be about this girl right here, Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey Mitchell has struggled mightily the first 2 games with Caitlin Clark, including shooting a terrible 4 for 16 from the floor in that 83-77 loss. When you really peel back the curtain and think about it, you know, Kelsey Mitchell was a 17.5 per game scorer from every year since 2020. She has not fared well to start off. I expect her to be better this game. DeWanna Bonner is slowly starting to get herself going here. And I do think the Washington Mystics, while being surprising with Sykes, with Kiki Iriafen, and obviously with Sonia Citron, I still like the Indiana Fever minus the 3.5 points to get the win in the cover versus the Washington Mystics. Next game will be the Mercury at the Lynx. And let's be honest, we were right. Maddie and I were right. We told y'all before the season started, right, Maddie, that the Phoenix Mercury were going to be a surprise team in the WNBA. And they've gotten off to a 5-2 start. Now, the key thing is we don't know if that lady right there, Alyssa Thomas, the Swiss Army knife, is going to play because she's been out for an injury. Right now, their Lynx are minus 650 favorites, plus 440 in the Phoenix Mercury. Line is 10.5, over under 156.5. I'm going to do something that I don't think anybody would think about they would have said before this season started. I'm going to take a Mercury under. I'm taking the under 156.5. I'll tell you why. You have two of the top 4 teams in defensive rating in the WNBA. You have a Phoenix Mercury team that's number 9 in offensive efficiency. You have a Minnesota Lynx team that is the slowest team in regards to pace. South Salbe just come back. We don't know about Alyssa Thomas. Either way, even when Alyssa Thomas is there, they want to walk the ball up the floor and get into offense. This isn't a Phoenix Mercury team with DT, right? And obviously BG. If this was Clea Copper in the game, I would look over. But because no Clea Copper so for the next 3 or so weeks because of her back injury, I'm going under 156.5 between the Lynx and the Mercury. Game number 3, Seattle versus Dallas. Check the lines before tomorrow. They've hovered anywhere between an 8.5 and to a 10.5 with the Seattle Storm as the favorites. The Storm have lost 3 games in a row. But those 3 losses, I think one was Minnesota, one was, I think, Vegas, and I think the other one was Atlanta. Ryan Howard's team has a little bit overachieved at this point. But when you look at Dallas, they're not good. And Paige probably ain't playing because of the concussion. And that puts on too much on the plate of Arike Owombowale, because she doesn't have her sidekick with her. Tierra McCowan, coming off the bench. I have no idea why. She's 6'8", should be starting. But when you look at those front court players, of Onyeka Onwuemeka, of Megaber, of Gabby Williams, and even the rookie Malanga getting a couple minutes off the bench, and then you go to a backcourt of Skylar Diggins, it's way too much for the Dallas Wings. Give me the Seattle Storm minus the points. This has been your Betting Above the Rim podcast, episode 154 for June 2nd. For all things sports gambling, download the Sports Grid app. Pre-game, in-game, post-game, props, predictions, and more from the very best of the sports gambling industry. We'll do a full preview of Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Start to get ready for the draft. For my producer, Matty George, Vinny does a great job with the graphics. Thanks for listening, folks. And always remember, it's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Good night.